So flexibility is defined as the amount of movement you have at a joint. So being able to bend my elbow, being able to raise my arm, these are examples of how much movement I have at my elbow and my shoulder. Flexibility is usually influenced by the length of your muscle. So of course, when we stretch, we're trying to lengthen our muscles out. And the reason we're trying to do that is because stretching and having good flexibility has really important benefits for your posture, has some benefits for injury prevention, and it has great benefits for just generally being able to perform movements of everyday life with ease and less stiffness, of course. So when you're flexible and you're doing flexibility training, you tend to be less stiff, certainly at the joints, where the muscles influence that range of motion. When it comes to injury prevention or just generally having healthy functioning joints and muscles, one thing we don't want is muscle imbalances. That means we don't want muscles on one side of the joint to be too tight and muscles on the other side to be too weak. So, I'll give you an example. If I've got really tight chest muscles and I don't stretch them, I might end up with rounded shoulders. And that would then mean that I've got obviously a change in my posture, but it also means that the muscles of my back become a bit weaker because they're getting stretched while the muscles at the front of my shoulders are becoming tighter and tighter. So that has a cause and effect. That tight muscles changes posture, changes joint alignment, and that obviously leads to less efficient movement, and over time that might end up in an injury. So stretching and flexibility is very important for maintaining optimal balance of the body, particularly around the joints. Flexibility can come in a few different formats. Probably the most obvious one is yoga, something like yoga, where you spend a large portion of the time focusing on stretching and posture. Flexibility can also be improved by generalised stretching programs. And there's different types of stretching. So we have static stretching. We have another form of stretching called dynamic stretching. And dynamic stretching is where we might raise the leg up and down a few times in the air or move my arms dynamically, but through range of motion. Many of the activities in kickboxing, specifically the kicking as well, require good degrees or large degrees of dynamic flexibility. And of course, if you think about kickboxing, you might envision something like a head kick where somebody lifts their leg up and throws a kick at head height. Now, of course, that requires quite good flexibility in the legs, the hips, even the trunk. So merely practicing these moves over time can lead to an improvement in dynamic flexibility, simply because on an ongoing basis you're repeating that move over and over, and the body has to adjust and accommodate to that move, and it does so by increasing the length of the muscle. The other part about boxing and kickboxing training is that, of course, in any good exercise program, stretching's involved. So at the end of the session, usually there's some time spent dedicated to the traditional static stretching methods. So people finishing the session and actually spending some time on a mat or on the floor running through a series of static stretching. So interestingly enough, kickboxing and boxing does contain an element of dynamic stretching and of course an element of static stretching. And I think between those two methods, it's quite acceptable to believe that you would improve your flexibility if you undertake kickboxing and boxing training regularly.